Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Wednesday afternoon. The South Carolina commitment sweatshirt comes back on for not only what I believe to be a really big win on the recruiting trail, literally and figuratively, but also more importantly, a much needed win for this South Carolina program. Look, they ain't no way around it. It has been a tough stretch for South Carolina on the recruiting trail, especially with the expectations we had for this program heading into the summer, where, hey, a lot of momentum around this program. Can they capitalize on the recruiting trail? You had Carter Meadows go to Michigan. You had PJ Dean go to Georgia. You had Julian Walker, who was really thought to be a lock to South Carolina. He also goes to Michigan, especially on the defensive line. South Carolina needed to inject some bodies into this program in the 2026 class. Well, boy, did they do so. Wednesday afternoon, 6'4", 340-pound defensive lineman Noah Clark from North Carolina committing to South Carolina. Here's where I'll start, is that these are the bodies that are very difficult to find in the transfer portal. And look, South Carolina just figured that out the hard way, where I thought South Carolina did a damn good job of addressing the defensive line in the transfer portal, but we all knew that it was hard, that it was expensive. You want to have dominant line of scrimmage play. You got to get these bodies out of the high school ranks. Noah Clark, is he going to be a guy that is like TJ Sanders and that can push for 10 sacks a season? No, probably not. You talk about a physical presence, especially in the run game in that middle of that defensive line. Yeah, that's Noah Clark's game. He's one of those guys that he ain't going to stuff the stat sheet, but he's going to allow a lot of players around him to play at a high level as well. Before we get more into Noah Clark, I do want to comment on what's going on with South Carolina on the recruiting trail. Something we've talked a lot about. They've had some tough losses, and they've taken some big swings as well. Like Carter Meadows, you knew that was going to be a national recruitment where the powerhouses of college football were going to be interested. Well, very similar to PJ Dean. Again, I would argue that with the PJ Dean recruitment and how far South Carolina got into that recruitment, I think that tells you, the power that South Carolina has built on the recruiting trail, where there's a lot of years and a lot of realities where PJ Dean, who had an older brother that played for Georgia, now going to the NFL, South Carolina had no business getting in that recruitment a couple of years ago. Now South Carolina was a legitimate contender in that one. This South Carolina program's got some gravitational pull, and they're taking some big swings. And when you take big swings, you're going to have big misses at times. What I would focus on here is, yeah, it's not like South Carolina has a top 10 class as we speak in the 2026 cycle, but this is their 10th commitment. 7 out of the 10 commitments are blue chip guys. I think South Carolina saying, hey, we want to focus on hyper talented kids at the high school ranks. We'll fill in the rest in the transfer portal. And South Carolina has shown us that this is a program that knows how to go about their business in the portal from an evaluation standpoint. And so, is it going to be a 35-person class for South Carolina in 2026? No, probably not. Is it going to be a top 10 class for South Carolina in 2026? No, probably not. It's going to be a little bit smaller, but you're going to have a lot of blue chip talent coming in. If you can supplement that blue chip talent from the high school ranks with valuable transfer portal additions, I think the South Carolina roster is going to be fine from a talent standpoint. Want to get more into Noah Clark, talk about not only what Noah Clark brings, but hey, where is South Carolina going on the recruiting trail over the next couple of days and weeks before we get into it, as always, to the South Carolina fans. That been a lot of highs, been some lows over the last couple of days. Regardless, y'all have shown a ton of support to the boys. We appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And as we get into early July, hopefully this is coming on and staying on over the next couple of days. Without further ado, let's get into Noah Clark. Now, what are the pros? Big body, the massive presence on the inside. I mean, you just turn on the film and say, hey, you kind of know what you're getting just looking at the body type. You're going to see offensive linemen try to down block on him. he's a guy that doesn't really move. And more importantly, can he do all that dirty work? He can eat up double teams and be a presence on the inside. He can also be a little bit disruptive as well. You're going to see this right guard pull play side. We're going to try to down block with the center. Yeah, that ain't going to work, especially when you're talking about a guy like Noah Clark, just putting a guy right on his keister and getting in the backfield. Very similar situation here where we're pulling guard play side, down blocking with the center. I don't know why these teams keep trying to do it because it ain't going to work. Now, here's what I like about Noah Clark. Here's you see a little athleticism as well. This is a cat that, yeah, he's 340 pounds. He can maneuver along the line of scrimmage. He can move lateral a little bit, excuse me. There are a lot of big bodies that aren't super active in the middle of the defensive line. Yeah, they'll eat some double teams up and do the dirty work, but they won't be a super big presence laterally along the line of scrimmage. Noah Clark, look at him run the line of scrimmage and go make a play. There is some sneaky athleticism for a big body like Noah Clark. Now, we could go throughout more of the film. It's more of the same. This kid is extremely big, but he's also extremely physically imposing. Now, those are the pros. The cons to Noah Clark, it probably starts with, look, he ain't going to be a presence like TJ Sanders was in the pass rush. I just don't think that's going to be part of his game. But I'll say this, so you need guys like Noah Clark. If you want to get into those third and long situations where you can ask a guy like Dylan Stewart to pin his ears back and go at it, get after the quarterback, but gosh darn it, you got to win on first and second down, stopping the run. That's the value that you get from Noah Clark. He's going to be a big presence on first and second down. He's going to help you stop the run. He's going to help your defense get into those third and long situations where these talented edge rushers that South Carolina has accumulated, then they can go pin their ears back and be the presence in the pass rush. Probably got to clean up the body comp a little bit, 6'4", 340. There's some bad weight that I think Noah Clark can shut off. Look, is he ever going to be a 300-pound defensive lineman? No, he ain't going to be that guy. But I think you can probably drop some bad weight, add to the play strength, and maybe get a little bit more juice from the pass rush with Noah Clark. The best way to wrap up the conversation of Noah Clark is this. These are bodies that are very hard and very expensive to find in the transfer portal. You want these bodies, got to get them at the high school ranks. That's what South Carolina did. Now, taking a look at South Carolina in the 2026 cycle, this is where the conversation gets interesting. We've kind of talked about it all summer. This is not a super big board that South Carolina has. They have identified some really talented kids out of high school. They pushed their chips in for those guys. They've hit on a few. They've missed on a few. With regards to the defensive line, start with Aiden Harris and Noah Clark. Love the balance in different skill sets you get with these two cats. Aiden Harris, he gonna be that pass rush presence. Really, really athletic interior defensive lineman that can move around the line of scrimmage. He's the guy that when it is 3rd and 10, that's where you're getting your pass rush production from on the inside, although he ain't the biggest body. Well, good. He got a big body in Noah Clark. And so what I love most about the defensive line class early on in the cycle is you got two blue chip guys with varying different skill sets and guys that can provide value in different departments, which matters when you're trying to create a defensive line. As it pertains to PJ Dean and Julian Walker, PJ Dean might be hard to flip, that he had some real ties to Georgia. Julian Walker, on the other hand, and y'all know I'm a Michigan fan. I'm a big fan of Julian Walker, so I don't exactly love saying this, but let's just be frank about it. Julian Walker is going to be around this program a lot over the next couple of months. He's probably going to be in attendance to plenty of games, and as much as I would love to see Michigan hold on to Julian Walker, I promise you, Shane Beamer ain't going to give up on Julian Walker. What we'll see from South Carolina now, I guess the next conversation, what is next for South Carolina? I think that the biggest name to watch is Landon Duckworth. I think this is a South Carolina program that's just been itching to really build some momentum, and you've seen it at times, but you've never seen it kind of really take hold, you might say. You get the public commitment of Landon Duckworth, which I think a lot of us expect. The face of the class for South Carolina in 2026. That seems really big. And you probably want that sooner rather than later to really get the ball rolling for South Carolina. The other name that I want to talk about is Darius Gray. Why I'm okay with it, or I guess I should say, why I'm not panicking about South Carolina when it comes to the recruiting trail, when it comes to talent acquisition, is I think they're bringing in a lot of talented players. It might not be a 30-person class that we've seen in the past, but it's going to be a smaller class, but it's going to be a lot of blue chip guys coming into this program. You can supplement your roster through the transfer portal. You look at the running back position and say, all right, South Carolina, it's not ideal that they're not taking a running back. I personally would like to see them add a running back from the 2026 cycle, but if you don't, that's a position where you can go pretty comfortably and go grab a guy in the backfield. What you can't do is find a guy like Noah Clark or find a guy like Aiden Harris, or it's very difficult to do so. I would say the same thing for a guy like Darius Gray. So what I guess I'm saying, or my take on South Carolina and where I'd like to see them go, is, hey, go find the players at positions that are hard to backfill in the portal. If you only take one wide receiver in this class, that's okay for two different reasons. Number one, you brought in a ton in the 2025 cycle, but more importantly, you can go address that position in the portal. It's going to be hard to find guys like Noah Clark and Aiden Harris. It's going to be hard to find a guy like Darius Gray, who I think can play early and be an all SEC guy for South Carolina. Make sure that if the class is going to be small for South Carolina, make sure you're getting players at the positions that is hard to address in the portal. Hey, if we miss on some positions, we can go backfill in the portal. Well, you can't do that with the defensive line. You can't do that with the offensive line. We'll see how South Carolina, and you might see South Carolina expand their board. And in classic South Carolina fashion, find these guys that are under the radar, diamonds in the rough, if you will, that South Carolina has historically had a lot of success with. I will stand by what I said in the month of June. I'm a fan of how South Carolina is going about their business. They know they have momentum. They're going to take big swings on the recruiting trail. When you take big swings, you have some big misses sometimes. Keep trying to capitalize on that momentum. And I'll say this, South Carolina wins the games I think they're supposed to win in 2025. College football playoff caliber team, at least in my opinion. You could see them catch fire in November. And that's when it's most important to get hot. We'll pause there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. We will continue to break down the commitments as they come in. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.